real, candid, and inspiring. This is Connecticut in Color on NBC Connecticut.
Welcome to another edition of Connecticut in Color. I'm Leslie Mays. We started this show in 2020 to share the stories of people of color making a difference in our state. From trailblazers to changemakers, new programs and new places over the last 2 years, we've talked about a lot. Today, we're taking a look back at some of our favorite stories, and that brings us here to Wilby High School, where 4 members of the class of 1988 remain friends to this day. The guys recently joined forces to start a bourbon brand. It's called 1970-something. 1970-something. It isn't just a song by the late, great, notorious B.I.G. for 4 guys from Waterbury who have been friends for almost 4 decades. It's the beginning of their lives and now a dream realized.
For us, 1970-something, we were all born in the year 1970, and it has a special meaning for us.
Sean Durantis, Paul Kennedy, Dakar Franklin, and Obie Bird are the 4 buddies behind 1970-something bourbon.
We consider ourselves brothers. We were born here in the city of Waterbury, graduated right up the street, Wilby High School, class of 1988. And we just get into conversations, those conversations about who's the greatest MC of all time, who's the greatest sports basketball team of all time. And one day we got into that conversation of, what's the greatest bourbon that you've ever tasted?
Those basement bonding session debates turned into a plan to create a new spirit that captured their preferred flavors. The group visited distilleries and spirit makers in Connecticut, Virginia, Kentucky, and more, determined to put Waterbury on the map with their own special blend.
We didn't have any experience in this at all. So we all did our own research. We all came together. We would have meetings every Wednesday for over a year or 2 years.
Through a lot of learning and the will to make it happen, 1970-something was born this spring, and to say it's been well received is probably an understatement.
We sold over 180 bottles in 2 hours, so that was our first batch gone. Now we're on to batch 3, that's pretty much sold out. So now we're on to batch 4, and that's pretty much sold out as well.
They're now on shelves in about 10 stores, with close to 24 more, including one major retailer, waiting for their supply to catch up with the huge demand. The business success is great, but these guys are more excited about what it represents for their community.
The black buying power is $1.2 trillion in this country and growing. A lot of that money leaves our community. It goes into the stores and it goes out of our community. And what we wanted to do was make sure that money stayed in our community.
For me, it means a lot. I mean, to grow up in this city and kind of do something that no one else has done. To see what we've saw and grow up in the environment that we grew up in and kind of evolve into this as 4 men.
4 friends coming together to make something magical, representing for their city and showing that with the right team around you, anything is possible.
Instead of classy, we keep it glassy. So that's our motto. So just trying to keep it glassy.
You will never find one of us without the other. When we put that first bottle on the shelf, it was a little tear, but I was happy to shed the tear because I shed it with my brothers.
We go now from high school friends together in business to a new college program that is destined to change the lives of young men across Connecticut. Capital Community College and Morehouse College have teamed up for a new initiative that guarantees a seat at the famed all-male Atlanta HBCU to any male student who completes their associate's degree here at Capital. It's called the Bridge to Morehouse, and they just introduced their inaugural cohort. Bridge to Morehouse students are part of a special new group at Capital. The school hopes will encourage students to earn a full 4-year degree at one of the nation's greatest historically black schools. There's a cost savings to the degree as well, as Capital students will only have to pay for 2 years of a Morehouse education instead of 4. And there's a commitment by both schools to work with students from the Bridge program to find scholarships and other aid to cover the cost of their degrees. Capital is the first community college in the Northeast to enter into this partnership with Morehouse.
Number 1, it expands our pool for our transfer population. Number 2, it expands our geographic diversity for the students that are coming to Morehouse College. But last but not least, it gives us an opportunity to bolster up opportunities for African-American males that want Morehouse to be their school of choice.
It's a dream come true, really, literally, for many, Connecticut families.
Morehouse approached Capital about the program in an effort to expand access and affordability of the school, which counts Martin Luther King Jr., former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, and film director Spike Lee among its list of decorated alumni. From higher learning to high tops, just around the corner from Capital Community College now lies a sneakerhead's dream, a place to buy and sell hard-to-find kicks now calls Pratt Street home.
Need some fresh kicks? There's a new spot in Hartford that's got you covered. Rundown on Pratt Street.
We're giving you the rundown of like what's the latest and greatest in sneakers and clothing, fashion.
They specialize in all things style on the secondary market. Hard to find original Air Jordans? They've got them. Classic Nike Air Force Ones? They're here too. The store is the brainchild of owner Christian Scott, who opened the chain's first location in Bridgeport in 2020. And get this, he's only 27.
I've been selling sneakers my whole life. When I was a kid, I used to stand outside of stores for 24 hours just waiting for whatever sneaker's gonna drop that morning. And it's gotten a lot more digital now.
Customers can buy shoes and clothes on the shelves and racks or bring in items to trade for what's here or sell things for cash. Each item gets posted to Rundown's Instagram account, and some shoes sell instantly.
It really starts at like $100 for like your typical everyday like all-white Air Force, and then we go upwards of thousands. We've sold sneakers for 5,000 plus.
The team showed us some of the hard-to-find sneakers in store right now.
So this one is the Nike Air Force One low, the off-white university gold color.
Rundown caters to an ever-growing market of people who use their shoes to say who they are.
It's kind of like an art piece. Essentially, people wear clothing as a form of self-expression and creativity, and sneakers are a great way to do that.
In less than 2 years, he's got 2 stores and plans to see Rundown's brand grow to even more locations. A childhood love for fly footwear, now realized in some pretty cool spots for the culture.
It was more so just kind of like something that we did for ourselves, just out of like the love for what we do. And then when you love what you do, I guess people notice.
All across Connecticut's capital city, there are people making history and making names for themselves well beyond Connecticut.
Okay, quiet set.
Action.
One of those people is Rashad Frett. We caught up with him on the set of a film he directed, the latest in a career that got started in Hartford. Rashad is a proud graduate of Hartford Public High, but as a kid from Connecticut, his path to movie making was not always clear. A call from a friend when he was a cargo loader at Bradley Airport made him take a hard look at what he wanted to do with his life.
He said, yo, Shad, if you don't leave Connecticut, you're gonna die there. And for some reason, like, it's stuck.
Fred graduated from Central Connecticut State University and began making documentaries about the criminal justice system and issues impacting communities of color. He applied to NYU Film School in 2015 and got in. There, he learned from filmmaking greats, including Spike Lee. Now he hopes that others in Connecticut will be inspired to create their own life story.
I want to positively put my mark on the world.
Action, action.
I have the ability to tell stories about my neighborhood or the stuff that my people have experienced that isn't really on the mainstream. It starts conversation.
Rashad Fred is also trying to bring others along for his journey in filmmaking. On his movie sets, you can often find his former classmates from Central and NYU, and even friends from here in Connecticut. You see this building and you probably have thoughts about license renewals and registration changes. But the Wethersfield DMV has a hidden history that one Connecticut citizen wants the world to know.
This would have been the south wall of the second prison cemetery.
The site was originally a prison and burial ground and ultimately the final resting place for many people in Connecticut. One of those whose remains lie here, a man named Prince Mortimer. He was brought to Connecticut from the African country Guinea at the age of 6 to be a slave in the year 1730. He spent much of his life making ropes for ships during the Revolutionary War. He was a servant to many officers, including George Washington. There are no photos of Prince, but the story of how he came to be imprisoned is one software architect and committed citizen historian John Mills wants more people to know.
It's said that he put arsenic in that master's morning chocolate in an attempt to kill him so that he would finally be free. But the master believed that to be so, took it to the courts, he was in prison.
The life of Prince and the many more that quite literally lie in these grounds is something John is working with the Wethersfield Historical Society to better acknowledge. They've already raised the funds needed to add a more prominent marker that tells the complete story of Prince and the prison grounds, and the Historical Society is hoping that all of those markers can be in place by sometime next year. You can always tell when someone's wearing a custom suit, and in Connecticut, you can tell if they are wearing a Brandon Council, too. The designer and creator behind these one-of-a-kind, completely bespoke suits is the owner and head tailor of the Main Attraction Custom Tailor and Design Shop in Plainville.
I mean, you can get custom suits, custom tuxedos, even custom shoes.
The name Main Attraction comes from Brandon's middle name, Jermaine.
All the buttonholes are handmade.
The suits, the result of his longtime love of fashion and menswear and high design.
I actually just love royalty. Like, my favorite colors are purple and gold. And a lot of like British royalty and everything, they'll use stripes and belts and things like that.
The North Carolina native got his start working in retail as a stylist at stores like Joseph A. Bank, Nordstrom, and Saks Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. That was before deciding to bet on himself and open up shop here in Connecticut.
I just knew in my heart this is what I wanted to do. This is always what I wanted to do. So once I had the opportunity to do it, I just took a leap of faith, and here I am.
Every custom item here is handmade start to finish by Brandon himself. The suits go from the traditional to the extravagant. Brandon says he picked up some things while working retail, but he learned his skills through YouTube videos and practice.
It's not easy. It's very tedious, but if you like to do it, it's definitely worth it.
In the shop, you can buy off the rack for about $400. Custom pieces begin around $900, but they come with an experience and a finished product you can treasure forever.
There's not a lot of true tailors around, so just that experience of coming in, touching the cloth, feeling it, having fittings, like it's a pretty good feeling.
The clothes, unique in so many ways, made by a guy who believed in himself and now helps others realize the best versions of themselves, stepping out in style.
You just automatically feel better with a custom piece on.
The Divine Nine, historically black fraternities and sororities. They occupy something special to African Americans that goes well beyond the college years. In addition to countless members, here in Connecticut are some of those organizations' national leaders. Coming up on Connecticut in Color, we're taking a look at the history of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated and remembering the legacy of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated National President and Hartford native Cheryl Hickman.
You're watching Connecticut in Color on NBC Connecticut.
Welcome back to Connecticut in Color. I'm Leslie Mays, and we are here in Stratford, where there is a museum that is dedicated to telling the stories of black people in America from the Middle Passage to today. The Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum is named for the parents of the man who made this very special place a reality.
This house was repurposed with the sole purpose of putting a museum here of African American history in my collection.
Jeffrey Fletcher is on a special mission to share the story of African Americans with Connecticut. Now, using a collection of memorabilia started by his mother and father, he's created a museum doing just that, the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum.
I just decided that it was time for her information as well as the information that is going on today to kind of like make a connection.
Housed in an 1800 Stratford home and inspired by the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, visitors start at the arrival of Africans in America in 1619 on slave ships with real artifacts like slave collars and auction manifests, to the Jim Crow era and seats from segregated theaters.
These are the seats that you and I would have had to sit in.
We try to recreate the balcony image of people of color. Were directly told to go to the balcony. They could not sit on the main floor.
The museum also highlights the Tuskegee Airmen, including Hartford native 2nd Lieutenant Edward Thornton Dixon. It's a labor of love for Fletcher, a former New Haven police officer who grew up in Colchester and used to take the exhibition on tour before establishing this space.
They can actually touch some of the artifacts and get a sense of what this history was about instead of having to read it in history books.
Board member Kim Newland worked with Fletcher over over the years to make this a reality.
All walks of life need to be here to take in, to learn, to be educated, to be advocates of what it is we're trying to get out to the masses.
After years of collecting, planning, and waiting, this museum is now here with the hope of teaching this special history to everyone.
I want to show America, I want to show Connecticut, I want to show the municipality of Stratford that this history is not threatening, it's just telling the real story.
5 of the Divine 9 fraternities and sororities celebrate their Founders' Days in the month of January. And that includes the men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, who celebrated 111 years of achievement on this January 5th.
Kappa Alpha Psi has more than 200,000 members, including the late filmmaker John Singleton, sports legends Arthur Ashe, Colin Kaepernick, and the late Bill Russell, and the first Black American to complete a spacewalk, Dr. Bernard Harris. The fraternity's national vice president, Jimmy McMichael, is from here in Connecticut. McMichael says for Kappas, the work and service of the fraternity isn't just something to do during college, but rather a lifelong commitment.
We provide mentoring, youth leadership programming, youth education programming, with a host of social action, political action programming, designed to really create the change that we want to see in our communities.
Kappa Alpha Psi has chapters in hundreds of cities around the globe, including in Hartford and Stamford, Connecticut. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is among the largest African-American women's organizations in the world. And Hartford native and member of the storied sisterhood, Cheryl A. Hickman, rose to become the sorority's 27th national president in 2021. She passed away this January, but left behind a lasting legacy.
Her legacy will be really wanting to make sure that we go to higher heights, wanting to make sure that we continue and got to higher heights of impacting the world.
Outside of the sorority, Hickman helped to make the dreams of family reality for many, supervising the in vitro fertilization lab in Montefiore Hospital in New York. She also had a deep love of music and adventure and was a co-founder of the Thrill Seekers Ski Club. A young father is giving major voice to an issue that many men are simply afraid to address: male factor infertility. Anthony Edwards is his name, and he's got a podcast that's tackling that sensitive issue and giving fathers a place to just talk.
And they said, Anthony, I got something to tell you. 90% of your sperm is abnormal.
Anthony Edwards is getting brutally honest, telling his personal story he knows many men would never dream of sharing. Male factor infertility, one of the founding topics of a podcast Anthony Edwards started called No Guru-ish. He's speaking directly to men, particularly those who want to be dads.
Your chances of having a baby naturally is pretty slim. It's pretty slim to none.
For Anthony, fatherhood has been a lifelong dream.
Growing up, I always wanted to be a dad.
So when he and his wife, Yannick, spent years trying to conceive with no success, he struggled to believe test results showing he, not his wife, had a fertility challenge. The Cleveland Clinic says male factor infertility is the contributing cause of half of couples who are struggling to conceive.
I had no idea what this was. I felt embarrassed. I was hurt.
Anthony says he lived in that darkness and denial for another year before eventually following the advice of doctors and turning to IVF. And this sweet little baby, Anthony Jr., came into the world last November. He's given his dad new praise and purpose.
I literally look at my son, and now I feel like I could do anything. One day I was just looking at my son, and I was like, you know, I want to talk about my journey. And that was like my form of therapy, the podcast.
Recorded in his home studio, the podcast was the very first time he publicly shared his struggles. The response has been overwhelming.
People started reaching out to me, couples saying they're going through the same situation, or I went through this situation. Thank you for sharing.
His new role as dad, one he's waited for his entire life. Now he's sharing his journey, hoping other men will drop the shame and stigma and get the help they need to make their dreams of family reality too.
My journey is to, as a man, kind of bring the awareness to the fathers.
Still to come, a Windsor High grad has created an online platform that's celebrating Black men around the world. After the break, we introduce you to the man behind The Black Man Can.
You're watching Connecticut in Color on NBC Connecticut.
Welcome back to Connecticut in Color. We are here in Windsor now, and this is a place that should take a little pride in having at least a little to do with the creation of a site that is changing how the world views the black man. Brandon Frame is from this town, and he's the founder of the Black Man Can, which began as a way to spread positivity, but is now a whole movement.
I made an observation that black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told, so therefore I had an obligation to create it.
For the Black Man Can founder, Brandon Frame, making sure the world can see black men in all their goodness was a one-time passion project that's now become a virtual expression of black joy.
I think I wondered, do people want to see positive images? And 12 years later, I can say that they absolutely do.
The Hartford native and Windsor High grad started the Black Man Can in 2010 as a blog to break stereotypes and show positive images of black men. Today, it's a massive digital presence with 900,000 followers on Instagram. People from around the world check this feed to see black men thriving, from fatherhood to fun, career, and success. He was inspired early on as a student at Morehouse College and wanted to replicate the community he found at the historically black all-male institution.
Create a community online and in person that is truly showing that the black man can.
From images as simple as this picture of 3 black doctors all standing over 6 feet in the operating room, dispelling the myth that black men of their stature can only play basketball, to this video that recently went viral of a little boy with autism and his barber and the game they play together to help him get through his haircuts.
So many people who commented saying, oh, I've had that same experience. So that was just so powerful that just one post can bring a community together.
The Black Man Can's reach now goes beyond the internet. They've added clothing lines for people to wear the brand's message and affirmation cards that double as pieces of pocket positivity. There's even a children's book about a little black boy learning to tie a tie, something Frame has taken with him as the Black Man Can hosts summits around the country and meetups that celebrate black men. For Frame, what started as a goal of showing a side of men like him the world doesn't see is now something much bigger.
It's only as powerful as the work that black men are doing. It's all about what we're accomplishing and making sure the world knows about it.
And that is a look back at some of our favorite Connecticut in Color. There are so many people and things that make our diverse state great. You can see our entire collection at nbcconnecticut.com/Connecticut in Color. I'm Leslie Mays, and thank you for watching our stories.